There was one surprising incident. I went to Aberdeen, where that professor had come here as a visiting professor to KEM Hospital, Professor McGilvery.
McGilvery.
So in his department, he called me, he asked me to give lecture there and all that sort of thing. That time, you see, I saw one candidate from India. She came there and I said, how is it that you are here? Because I could remember her because she had appeared for a MD examination and she passed with credit, you see, from one of our Indian universities. So I said, why you are here? They, what are you doing? I said, no, I am going to appear for the exam here. And but I said, you have done your MD, you have done, you see, MD with distinction, and you are supposed to be a very good student. You should have been absorbed in your college, you see. Said, no, but I wanted to do foreign qualification. And I said, now what are you doing here? You as an MD, see, what are you doing here? He says, no, I am watching things, you see, from a distance. They don't allow me to enter the theatre. Even professor is your friend. Will you tell him to? I said, I will never tell this thing. See, I don't like this idea of you with your qualifications and all that you have achieved. You see, you should come here and appear for that examination. I said, it's not very good at all. See, you are humiliating yourself. No, she was actually crying. She said, I am not doing anything for this. I said, why don't you go back again? She said, no, she said, no, I can't go back. 2 years have passed, you see, and if I go back, I have not got the degree or anything. And that's why she doesn't want to go back. She's wasting her time there. Now, this sort of a thing is bad, you see. And from that point of view, I think it's good that the government of India has stopped the recognition of these foreign degrees. I hope in the appointment of the posts also they will maintain that, you see, so that they will realize that Indian degrees have got some value, you see, in the service conditions or things like this, you see. This is what I would say for the education that goes on. After all, in India, you see, everything is going on according to the requirements of the Indian medical councils and things like this. However, there's one thing is there. The trend in which this training program is going on is not to the satisfaction of what is required in India. And that is one of the reasons why the medical training, you see, in India which is dominated by WHO, British and American institutions, you see, to such an extent that we are producing doctors who are suitable for America and England. And it is more attraction there, you see, because once they go, they get a chance to go to England and America. Nobody likes to come and they settle down there only, and they like to have a life there rather than strenuous life in India or something of that type. But one thing is there, actually our training program must be modified. What should be done is
to suit our conditions.
Yeah, to suit our conditions. What is required in our country is the one that should be taught foremost, and not what is required in America. See, whether it applies to a medical graduate or a super specialty or medical postgraduate. Both cases, it should be the thing. I've seen so many postgraduates finishing their work and coming here. And when they come and start work, within 6 months they think of leaving the country and going back again, because whatever training they have received is not suitable for them to practice in India, and that's why they run away. See? Same way, undergraduate students, after getting their graduation, they find the same thing, you see. So that what was at a higher level, now it has come to the level of the undergraduates also, the level. So, and I think it's a good principle to have training program as required for the mofussil places. And I think these new colleges that are coming up, you see, where they are expected to teach the students as required for a doctor in villages, doctor in smaller towns, you see, with a limited amount of instruments available, facilities available for making a diagnosis, and they themselves make the diagnosis by their clinical experience, you see, is a thing that is required for a country for some time at least. I don't say that for 20 years or permanently, but at least for the time being, you see, that sort of a training, clinical practice should not be lost sight of. And this is becoming very prominent now at this stage.
You yourself don't ask for many investigations for your patients.
Yeah, people, my colleagues, you see, do not like that method of examining the patient, because I have been trained up and I have been teaching also the students. I always say, when you examine the patient, make it a point to make 100% diagnosis first, and then run about for the investigations, you see, and then you confirm whatever diagnosis you have made or disprove it. There is no shame in disproving your own diagnosis. On the other hand, I always used to teach the students, I said, first make it a point to examine and make a diagnosis and write it out on the paper so that this is your diagnosis. And then find out how many times you make a mistake. Usually you might find that in the beginning 90% you are correct, 10% may be wrong. Subsequently, gradually, further and further, you find that you come to a stage nearly 99% you are correct. Then confirm your things, you see, by investigation, you see, whatever you require or are available, and in that way you will find that you improve your clinical sense and judgment. And that is what is wanted. A bedside, you must be able to diagnose the patient, you see. And in the case of a gynecology, it is absolutely essential. It may be all right in a physician's, you see, general physician, even diagnosis, if it is made or not made, patient treated, God only knows what the trouble was, and ultimately they recover also, and still the physician doesn't know what the diagnosis was. You see,
Patients get cured on their own.
Yeah, always.
Always.
No doctor ever cures a patient. That's what I always say. You see, patient cures himself or herself, and doctor only helps to develop a confidence to create, see, body reactions in such a way a patient can be cured by themselves. You see, this is what I feel. You see, but in the case of a gynec, being a surgical part of it, you have to be 100% sure about what is your diagnosis. Otherwise, you can make a mess, you see, of the whole case. Then in that case, you might say that they were fortunate, unfortunate, and then luck factor comes in. This is not. This is all the mistake factor of the doctor who has been treating it. You see? So this will be...
before knife is in the hands, the diagnosis must
be
ready.
there. See, in fact, I have been brought up by my teacher, my father. He never allowed me to fix up a case for an operation unless I wrote the diagnosis, and on the list also, diagnosis, whatever it was recorded. You see?
No
and
exploratory laboratory.
no exploratory, no fake trying to find out after deciding. That is not, you see. So that is where you'll find the requirement is there.
Dr. Purandare, you worked as an advisor to the government of Maharashtra and government of India on MCH and family planning. So how did you develop this program?
See, my interest in this family planning program started in 1939. I was the first man to start doing a postpartum, that is after delivery, operation for sterilizing the patient. Now, then that time, after I did about 30 cases, I presented the material to the All India Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Lahore. See, and there, after doing these 30 operations and showing the people that after delivery this operation is safe and things like this, originally I suggested that it should be done after 10 children.
10 children?
10 children, you see, because that time I proved it, that after the 10th delivery, you see, a mother is nearly 50% chance of her dying in the next deliveries, you see, and all the statistics was taken out. You see, they would die of a rupture of the uterus or some complication coming up and things like this. So, however, these gynecologists then did not like it. They said, look at this young boy coming up and telling that you should do a sterilization, do a biggest sin, you see, of sterilizing a woman like this. But gradually people also realized, government also started taking interest in that, and ultimately it came to 6 deliveries, then it came to 4 deliveries. Now it has come to about do ek or do bacha bas. See, 1 to 2, that means about 2 deliveries or 3 deliveries maximum is all that is expected, and then you do this operation. Now this sort of a thing, you see, was advised. Before that, vasectomy was the only way of dealing with the problem, you see, of doing a sterilization. It never caught the speed with which later on it developed into a speed. But whatever was being done was done as a vasectomy, and no female sterilization was ever done. Then I thought that I might develop a new technique.
Huh.
from below, that is from inside, without opening the tummy, because patients were worried that their tummy will be open. So from inside through the vagina, get an access to the tube, tie the tube, and in that way there was no scar on the abdominal wall. Patients would accept this, and in that way the vaginal sterilization program was started. In fact, the first camp that I did in the world, I should think, or in India also, was at Virar.
Thana district.
Yes, railway station on the suburb. So that Virar, when I went, I did 7 operations on one day. And during that 7 operation, I got so much sort of a confidence about it. In fact, there was no operation table. I had to pull a table from the primary health center doctor, the writing table, and tied to it some branches of tree in this compound. You see, this drumstick tree, you see, with a fork-like arrangement, and tied them on the bottom to the one end of the table, one on each side, and then the legs were hanged on that, and in that way the vaginal sterilization was done with whatever battery or something was available. You see,
No proper light.
nothing, you see, absolutely. So that was the first camp to be held, you see, in India.
Outside the well-equipped operation theatre.
Outside, that is whatever theatre was available in that primary
Yeah.
health center. You see, you know, that primary health center was not in a functioning condition also. There was only one case, you see, in that center, actually. That too was some typhoid case was there, you see. And then delivery case was another one that was there, you see. And whole month sometimes they would have one case or 2 cases like this. Now, such places, where do you expect any operation table, operation theatre and anything like that? You see, but gradually it started developing. Its next camp I got, where there were about 85 cases operated, you see, of vaginal sterilization. And then I took the responsibility of training all the civil surgeons as well as the primary health center doctors coming to Guadia Hospital for a week or so. And they were given training, both theoretical as well as practical, because camps were held on Sundays, so that half the batch would join that, and the new coming batch also would join, and in that way these camps were used as a place for training the doctors.
The civil surgeons and district health
District
officers.
health officers and primary health center doctor officers, all were coming, you see, in batches. Government used to send them in batches, and in that way they got the benefit. In fact, we also trained them in a postpartum sterilization. That is, after delivery, on the 3rd or 4th day, patient could be operated for sterilization per abdomen. Now, in this way we continued, and in fact it became so popular. I used to have nearly about 100, 120, 30 camps in a year. Apart from that, you see, the civil surgeons, you see, started giving their services as this postpartum sterilizations and vaginal sterilizations. Not all, but some of them, you see, who were competent enough, they started giving. A stage was reached when we find that even the health minister of that time, you see, he was scared that he said now the number of female sterilization compared with the male sterilization, you see, formerly there used to be hardly 10% female sterilization, now 90% male. Now the stage has come when I find that even 60% female and 40%, you see, a male sterilization. If this goes on, we might even reach up to 80% female, and then it becomes a very difficult problem for us. He said, this is becoming something topsy-turvy. No, I said, this is the correct thing, because usually you find that 30 women in 100 delivering cases require the services of sterilization. And out of this 30, 1/4 of them, that is about 7 or 8%, are the male sterilization, and the remaining are female sterilization. 1/4 and 1/4, that is 75% female and 25% male. So in this way we went on, you see, increasing the number of cases like that, till actually a stage was reached when we find that figures up to 4 or 5 lakhs per year could be easily done in the state of Maharashtra every year. In that way, other state also might be doing to some extent like this, though not all, you see. And in fact, for 5 years, the Maharashtra state, you see, they got a successively prize for being the highest in the country, you see, for a sterilization program.
So this your training also must have
Yeah,
helped.
that is, I am putting more than that, the training part. You see, training.
Administrators were also trained, no?
Yeah,
Civil
everybody.
surgeons.
So everybody came, you see, for regularly for training purposes. Now this continued, and what was most important is, as we learned from the experience of Bombay,
Yeah.
you see, Bombay city proper, we found that once we established this postpartum sterilization program in the municipal hospitals, automatically we used to find that every year there used to be about 1,25,000, 1,30,000 or 45,000 deliveries in the city of Bombay, you see, and we would get the women sterilized to the extent of about 40,000, 45,000 women every year after the delivery. Now this was going on constantly. We didn't require any camp program for the city of Bombay. And that made them realize that if their primary health center doctors and civil surgeons work regularly, constantly, the program of family planning will not be difficult. And that's what ultimately we did it. See? And the whole of Maharashtra work was going on smoothly. See? Because routine work used to be there. Apart from that, occasionally the camps would go and the camps would fill up the gap that was there. See, only 1/4 of the patients were requiring camp. Rather, 3/4 were actually being operated by the primary health center doctors. Now this continued, you see, for a long time. And we succeeded for quite some time, you see, keeping up our number, see, as it was required. However, gradually something has come in. I think not that method was wrong. Something has come in which has affected the program to some extent. And that is when the laparoscopy came in. Laparoscopy is a good instrument. Laparoscopic methods are good. They are quite good for a big hospitals in a town or in a city and things like this. Very suitable one for other works also. But it has created one bad thing. That was regular work that was going on with a postpartum sterilization to be done by even the primary health center doctors or by the civil surgeons. It was neglected. You see, that was the biggest drawback, you see, in the whole program. And there was full enthusiasm of everybody to do a laparoscopic sterilization. It was all right for a big city, but for mofussil places, it could not have been helpful at all. However, somehow the enthusiasm of our government and the influences that were brought out by the outsiders interested in selling their laparoscopes and things like this, it has adversely affected our program. You see, today a stage has come. Primary health center doctor thinks that it is not his responsibility to carry out a sterilization in a recently delivered case.
Which he used to do in the past.
Routine, he was doing it. Civil surgeon also, he says, no, laparoscopy is the only thing that my laparoscopy is not working. So why should I bother about it? Let somebody come from outside. That is his responsibility. Patient dies because that fellow has operated, not the civil surgeon, not the thing. And in that way we found that the program somehow is not getting so-called good response. Of course, those who were enthused about it, they are still saying that when they go, they do 500 laparoscopies in one day. That's all nonsense. There is no such a thing that can be done, because every laparoscope requires 20 minutes for sterilizing the instrument, and half an hour must go in between when they take the same instrument for another operation. You see, now this is a very important thing, and the neglect of this and trying to do 100 cases, 200, 300 cases with one instrument or two instruments, the instrument is never sterilized even. Some of them were saying that they just wipe it with a spirit and that becomes a sterilization. A thing like this, after all, to put an instrument in the tummy of somebody is a closed cavity. It's not an open cavity. It's a closed cavity. And in the closed cavity, under tension to put any infection, the patient might develop distension of the abdomen and they die. Now this is not being realized. We are after a target. So many must be done. It is easy to do it. So just go ahead with it. And the administrators don't want to have the responsibilities of anything happening to the patient or any complication coming up. Easiest thing is do the laparoscopy, send the patient home. You see, same day. If they develop any complication, they will go to the civil hospital or they will go to some other hospital or somebody else will deal with them. You see. And that is the whole thing. And if she dies also, nobody knows what she died about. You see, because in villages, nobody knows. Anybody who...
They don't do post-mortem examination.
Nothing at all. An ordinary MBBS who never had any experience, suddenly a patient comes, he opens the tummy or opens the whole body, and then he says, all right, maybe this, maybe that. And what importance is given to the diagnosis that is comes also. Now, these are all the points which are very important, see, from the point of view of real progress. When you are going to do it on a large scale for a countrywide, you have to use a method which is going to be very safe. To my mind, I find that laparoscopy is all right in America because everybody operates there in an air-conditioned big theater. You see, when they do a laparoscopy, there's special laparoscopy theaters and things like this, various institutions. I myself was the first man to start doing a laparoscopy in the KEM hospitals and things like this. Then supplemented it with doing a colposcopy, also published papers on colposcopy. I had done a colposcopy in the camps also, but I never encouraged government to proceed with the colposcopy then. Hysteroscopy, that is through looking into the uterine cavity and trying to burn the ends of the tubes from inside. That also I have been even done sometimes as a demonstration in the camps also. But I would not advise anybody because after all, see, you must be expert in doing this.
Super specialist.
Everybody is not expert to this. You see? And it is better that if as a routine all other people are going to do it, let them have a method which is very simple, you see, and is not needing any expensive instruments and gadgets, you see. Very simple type of thing should be required, then only they will do it. If they are not able to do it, you see, if I ask anybody now, take this hysteroscope because I have done it, you do it. Like he will go right through the uterus and perforate something else inside, you see. Now, this is a thing that has to be kept in mind.
Can we train the people in that?
You can train the people, but they will be useful, you see, in a big city.
Not in a room.
Suppose if he does the perforations, who is going to repair? Is he there in the mafusal
And
places?
training also will be difficult because it's a blind procedure.
Yes, it is so many complications, and such things require also complications are which are more severe and dangerous, not simple type of complications which can be dealt with. So from this point of view, I think, you see, once again we are coming back to the method which I started saying, mini laparotomy. Now they call it as mini. I say micro laparotomy, still more, because smaller than a mini, you see. Is hardly small size which I have been using from 1939, very small, and trying to take out the tube.
About 1 inch incision?
No, less than 1 inch.
Less than 1 inch incision on the abdomen?
Yes, per abdomen. It is just like an incision that you give for a laparoscopy, nick that you make, a little more bigger nick than that, you see, and patient can even sit up and even walk about the same evening, you see. So there is no question about this sitting and walking and patient attending to her breastfeeding and things like this. That is possible. But at the same time, you see, simpler method like what is called mini laparotomy would be useful and must be brought back again. In Bangladesh and other places now in developing countries, they have started with it now. You see, that itself shows that there is a need for changing the attitude. Now I have tried also another method, and that is particularly those who have got 4, 5, 6 children. I would rather do one more method which I have tried, putting the pellets, you see, of camoquins, you see, inside the cavity of the uterus. That is, you just like a loop, you put those pellets, 3 of them at the fundus, and call the patient every month for 3 days. And 3 days you introduce these 3 pellets, you see, one at one side, one in the center, one on one side. And when the patient, after 3 insertion of the pellets, usually become completely sterile.
Just in the uterine cavity?
Just in the uterine cavity. Now that doesn't require any anesthesia, doesn't require any big major operation theater, nothing of the sort. It's just a very simple thing. We will be trying this now, you see, in Kedwa Road project, you see, which I have got for the rural and Adivasi people. And there I am sure once we get a sufficient number of these pallets, we might be able to do it. As a pilot project, I might start now, see, because other 30 we have already done in our center at Chopati, you see, in Purandare, research center. That 30 cases were tried, and we have also found that these are practically safe. There is no danger of anybody losing the life, and this counts a lot, you see. And no operation. People will be too willing to have anything of that type, you see.
And anybody can insert those.
Anybody can insert those. There is no need of special training. There are those who have been putting in loops and copper T and things like that. They can as well do it, you see, in this way.
No special equipment or
Nothing
instruments.
is no extra instrument required. Nothing is required, and from that point of view,
And
I
will
think
be very cheap also.
yeah,
Not expensive.
not expensive, provided these pellets sterilized by gamma rays or any of the simple method of sterilization are put in a packet of a plastic packet containing these three, and they can be easily carried. There is no extra special instrument required in these cases. Now this might come in, as I feel. Otherwise, the other alternative is mini lab of that type. She will come into vogue soon. Now, another point also which is equally important is the principle is very important, and that is before the delivery of the first baby, they should not use the pills.
Oral contraceptives.
Oral contraceptives should not be used for our Indian patients.
So you mean first child should be delivered as early as possible after marriage?
No, they can use the loop. They can use the copper T.
Oh, only oral contraceptive.
But
Why
after
do you
get,
say so?
because after you get the first child and you establish the fertility of a woman like this, then if you use the pills, it does not come in the way of the future ovulation and menstruation. But before that, it is risky, and I have seen cases in large number coming with a permanent sterility produced by the use of the oral contraceptives. Even it may be for 6 months or it may be for 1 year, you see, and then begging to have a baby because they don't get the child. The ovulation stops completely, you see. Now this is the thing that, but in the second and third child, in between, to spacing purposes, again we will have to encourage the post program of a loop or
Pills.
pills will do also, and also copper T.
Some people maintain that population explosion is a myth and that new science and technology will be able to feed, clothe and house all. What's your view, sir?
No, I don't think that it has any meaning at all. First of
You
all,
don't believe in it?
I don't believe in it at all. I feel, see, I have seen the results of case. Switzerland became such a rich country. Why was it? You see, in France and other places, they came in the way of having a contraceptive advice or anything given. But Switzerland was the only country, you see, where this family planning program, not on national basis, but an individual basis, was existing.
Voluntarily?
Yes, they themselves were doing it. It's very difficult to find any Swiss couple with more than 2 children. You see, they may be called Catholics, but nobody will allow you to do. The whole structure of that society is such that they never kept it, you see, growing like that. And as a result of it, it's one of the richest countries locally, you see, from an individual point of view. It's one of the good. Everybody is so rich, everybody is so happy, everybody is such a good, mainly because they have got a restricted, limited family which existed right from the beginning of this century. And that's changed the outlook of the country as a whole, you see, financially. Our India will never succeed in doing that. You see, and that's why I think it is necessary that restricted family is the only way of getting over this problem of everything in excess.
Do you think sex education will help in the program of family welfare?
No, sex education is a must. As a matter of fact, I am of the opinion that the ideas about the sex education should have started long ago. Right from the 8th and 9th standard in the school, they should start giving this idea about a sex education. Because the ignorance about the sex is a responsible factor both for increasing the population as well as contracting the infectious diseases. You see? So from that point of view, this knowledge about the sex should be given from a maternal health program point of view, right from the time when the child girl is in that 8th and 9th and 10th standard.
That is about her menstruation period.
Yes, about her menstruation period, about the way of conception and things like this. Now I find, when I was just casually going through some of the textbooks, you see, of the modern high schools, some of them, you see, I was really surprised that even in the science course, you see, they are given sufficient importance to this so-called sex development as applied in the animal kingdom, then also in the plants and things like this, and that way indirectly they are training the boys and girls to see about the sex at this stage. It's all right those who take science, but those who don't take science, they are left ignorant about it, and they are the culprits, I should think, of spreading the infection, spreading the problems of girl getting pregnant, you see, and they're not realizing what they have done. Thing like that, you see, is very often responsible. And I think the modern boys and girls going to the commerce and arts and other places, they are actually not exposed and they don't know much about the sex.
So information should be given
It's
to them.
absolutely necessary from the point of view of maternal health programs subsequently.
So with so much of opposition from the orthodox Indian moralists, how did you succeed ultimately in getting the new abortion bill passed? You were one of the members of the Shantilal Shah committee.
Actually, I was the one who was responsible for bringing in the bill. I had approached the central government, and luckily that time Sir John Peel had come here, you see, to which I made a reference. You see,
The president of the Royal
President
College.
of Royal College, London. And they were trying to bring in a bill like that in England, and they could not succeed that time, because in England, you know that how they are conservative.
This is in early 60s?
Yeah, 60,
65.
60, 65. So that time, you see, London, they could not do anything. Actually, I approached them, and I took Sir John Peel also with me. He was the health minister. I didn't go to the prime minister that time, but I went to the health minister and tried to convince him how they are not being able to succeed because of the opposition from this. But Sir John Peel was keen that it should be done like that. So I went and told him, I said, this is the only thing. And the argument which I put forward was that number of women who die either as a result of an abortion or a full-time delivery in India, half the number is because of the infected abortion cases done by the quacks. Now all these, half the number of the cases that die could be prevented if we have an abortion bill. Because with the help of the abortion bill, doctors might be able to treat these cases. Otherwise, no doctor was willing to treat any septic case coming from outside because of this something done by some quacks. Because police department, you know, if patient died and a doctor reported that this is a case of a criminal abortion, and then that was the patient died. See, because abortion was not allowed in our country, the police will run after the doctor only. You have reported, no? So you must be responsible for this. This sort of a thing used to happen also, you see. But what I feel is, by having this abortion bill passed, you see, immediately the mortality rate, that is, women dying during pregnancy or following delivery, that number fell down by nearly 50%. Half. In Wadia Hospital, we used to have about 60, 70 deaths in a year with 10,000 deliveries. As soon as the bill was passed, you see, we found next year the number came down to 30, because the abortion cases dying were not there at all. You see, all were those due to full-time delivery. Now this sort of a thing, as it happens, you see, is not realized by the people so easily. The bill, you know, that the bill was first brought in as an abortion bill, you see, when it was prepared. For 1 year we were going around all over the country and we interviewing the doctors and lawyers and other people just to find out whether there is a need for such a condition. And ultimately when it was put before the parliament, it was thrown away, because abortion bill is something which should not be. But later on I suggested that we'll change the name of abortion bill. We'll call it as medical termination of pregnancy bill. And immediately next year it was passed, it was a medical termination of pregnancy, something medical. And ultimately it was passed. And as a result of this, we find these criminal cases coming practically down to nil level. You find that the patients are not dying to that extent. The abortion bill, or the
medical
termination of pregnancy, has really helped in reducing the mortality in the abortion cases. But there's another advantage that has been there as a result of this is that now people are going to the right place for getting the thing done. You see, not that every place is quite good for this purpose. There are some unsuitable places where they have their abortions carried out. Government has to be very particular about the whole program. And in fact, there was a thing like a recognition by the government before an MTP is carried out, you see, at any place. But as this thing is not strictly followed, and that is the trouble why you do find some complications coming up. Now there is one thing that must be kept in mind is abortion should not be used as the method for family planning purposes. Unfortunately, it is being done. Some communities, as a routine, just go for having an abortion and repeated abortion also because they don't use the family planning program after that. And that is a bad thing. I feel that at least 25% of the abortion cases, there should be some sort of a family planning program accepted by the patient or by that person who is being operated. Now one can easily reach that stage, you see, of giving 25% family planning methods, either in the form of a loop or convincing them and asking them to have a sterilization at the time of this operation. But one will have to be very strict in this matter, and particularly it is not accepted by all communities in the society. That's still worse. Certain sect of people, you see, are particularly Christians. Now they would say that they would not mind having repeated abortion, but they would not like any loop being introduced or anything or oral pills to be given because religious heads advise them not to have them. You see? And then when they become pregnant, they say, all right, you go and have an abortion carried out. Now similar sort of a thing happens also in other communities. And that's why, you see, this problem of religion should not come in the way of giving a nice maternal health program to the community. Then coming to this other factor, and that is whether this doing the abortion freely available. So many people have asked me, are you not responsible for creating all this question about, you see, the young girls get repeated abortion done and their moral is affected and all that sort of a thing. I feel that after all, it's an individual's question, and the progress that they have made as regards the moral of the person is all cannot be just regulated by rules and regulations, you see. And just because an abortion is allowed now, that they might be going astray and do anything they want. But I don't think it is like that. Even supposing an abortion bill was not there, they would have done the same thing. Now at least they survived, then they were dying. It is the only difference, you see, that has been there. And that's why I feel that as the time goes, people will get more conscious about improving their morality in this case. See? In the beginning, some problems might have been there in excess, but I think things might settle down. Even now, if you just study the present day college girls and boys, you see, what do we find? What was existing in America has now come here. You see, they are here. Sometimes they come for an internal examination even without marriage. They come, and when you don't do an internal examination, you see, for a gynecologist point of view, they come and say, doctor, you are not examining me properly. I said, why? No, you didn't do the internal examination. I said, is there any need for doing an internal examination in your case? Then she would say, no, I would like that my internal examination should be done. I said, what is the problem? I'm scared that I might have become pregnant. Now, to that stage, you see, the modern boys and girls in the colleges and even outside the schools, you see, they are doing the thing. So I think after all, this is expected of every society in the world. You see? And as the world is changing, this is also going to change.
Young generation is following the American traditions very fast.
That's a fact. But you cannot change it, whether you call it a deterioration or whether you call it as a progress. Fact remains that there is a change, and you have to be ready for the change that exists. See? And from that point of view, I think things are going on. Make them realize also, because they can make mistake once and then they may not repeat it, you see, so long as they realize that they have made a blunder.
Nana Sahib, this educating the community and the masses will help a lot in the family welfare program and general health also. So what do you think the best way of doing
No,
it?
you see, everything has got two sides. Theoretically, education will help. No doubt people are now become more educated about it than those who talk about education.
I mean,
You
not
see,
the school education,
no.
taking the
Even outside
message to the community.
community. You see, people have got message all right. Only problem is when you say methods to be used for educating the masses. You see, the bad effects of it are that the people who organize this so-called education and propaganda and motivation, there's lots of loopholes, and the money that is used for this purposes, whether it really goes for that purpose or not, is a big problem. You see? And that's why I think that they might be spending the money in that direction. But however, how far it is useful is a problem. I don't think. And people talk about it. I said radios and televisions, they are giving lot of program, motivation to the people. It becomes too much sometimes. You see, to such an extent that sometimes you find the advertisement is so much that we have to put the television out, you see, from there, or even the radio if their programs are going on. Some of the people get so much bored that they put off the radio, you see, in that way. So that there is a limit to each one. And from that point of view, I think though education is a good program, you see, for this family planning purposes, but at the same time, people have become more educated now, I think. You see, they know everything about it, and it's only we go on talking that education should be carried out and things like this. Because naturally, the education department and everybody is very keen that this should be used as one of the additional items for their department to carry out. You see? So I am not so much in favor. In fact, you see, whenever I go to the villages, have a camp, and then I hold lectures there, public lectures.
Some films can be shown.
Films can be shown. I have even written the dramas also for this purpose. Show them on the previous day, and next day we find a very good response. But at the same time, you see, when we find that people are so much well informed about it, you see, where is the need for doing all this double shifting again? You see, they're all conscious about the whole thing, and I don't think there is much help. Theoretically, certainly, because everything must be done by education, and then this is. I can tell you one thing. You see, it all depends on how sincerely the work is done. That is the main thing. You see. Now, if I go for any camp, I have just to put on board that B and Purandare is coming for such and such a camp. They don't do any motivation also. You see. Next day, there's a big crowd, about 500 people would come. Then I have to choose the first 500 out of this first 200 or 300, whatever number we are going to do. You see, we used to do it. You see. And that way, I think you find that properly organized camps, seriously carried out, and honestly done, I think the response was always good. People always give a very good response. Some of the places I had occasion even to go to Gujarat, and after the camp I have given the lectures. But what I find is, we talk about an education, even in the mafusal places in the villages, when I hold a public lecture, for nearly half an hour or 1 hour, they go on asking questions, looking to the questions that have come from the audience. You see, I feel that they know much more about it than the people even in the big cities like Bombay. You see, the audience coming from a big cities like Bombay. You see, this is what difference is. The other day I was in Baroda from 6 o'clock till about 9:30. You see, first after an hour and a half talk, you see, they went on asking questions on these various aspects. You see, problems in the female's life is in the modern days. See, I was really surprised the questions that they were asking. See, very intelligent one, and person who is versed about the subject, see, will not be able to ask such questions also. They're not educated people, but still, practically, from a practice point of view, they were all informed about what is required, maternal health and a child health program.
You held some major gynecological surgical camps also in Mafuzal areas. Would you tell a little more about those?
Yeah, you see, first of all, to hold gynecological major camps, see, it's not possible for all.
No.
I am not in favor of it being organized by any Tom, Dick and Harry. You see, unless the operating surgeon and the team that they have got is so confident as not to kill anybody, and there should be no complications at all, then only you are entitled for carrying out a camp like this. Every year I used to go to different places, different districts or country, different states, you see, like that going on. I think about 14 camps, one every year has been done to all the most important places so far.
Mafuzal places.
Yeah, I mean once in Uttar Pradesh, once in the Rajasthan, somewhere, some Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, every. See.
Each camp is around 20 days duration.
Yeah, each camp would vary according to say 15 days or 20 days, and during those 15 days we would operate. 5 days we didn't, see, because we have to look after the patient also after the operation. Post-operative. So first 15 days we operate, and every day we are undergoing a regular rigorous work starting at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, going on till late in night. You see, and in that way we could do series of operations. Some places nearly 200, 400, 500 major surgeries. Small we don't count at all, but a major surgical operations were done, and all this could be done. Good leadership must be there. That's most important thing. You must be able to have a guide in such a way that in cases of difficulties, in case of complications, or in case of anything arising as an emergency, you are able to tackle this there and then. You see, this is the most important thing, and that's why I feel that though we succeeded on those occasions, sometimes we removed the tumors as big as 52 kilos in the tummy of a woman. She was hardly weighing, may not be even 48, 50 kilos.
That is more than her weight.
Yeah, you see. So like that, I mean, tumors of different sizes, cancer cases and all that. But how long can this continue? What I am saying is this. After all, it's the duty of each state to see that all the people in the villages, they get the services that are wanted. They would be in a position to give it. You see, when I was operating in Amarkantak, Prime Minister came and I was operating, I was removing a big tumor like this. He said, Dr. Saab, what is this? He said, the curses of the government. He said, what do you mean, the curses of the government? I said, poor lady, for 7 years she has got a tumor. You see, she hasn't got the facilities to go to Bhopal or wherever there are main center is there. You see, she can't go there. And she is lying like this for 7 years and there's no services. No local doctors also are giving, because she cannot pay for her admission under the table. You see, for an admission to the hospital. So how can she get all this? So the Director of Health Services there was told by the Prime Minister, we are not as fortunate as Maharashtra, where Dr. Purandare is available to various villages and he goes and operates there. Like that, things happen. What can you do in a big country? You see, this is expected, and unless it is regularized, it's very difficult to give medical services to all people who really require it. The poor people who stay outside in a mofussil places far away from big cities.
Dr. Purandare, you have also worked on Ayurvedic drugs and other pathies. Could you tell about your other work?
Other work, you see, the various directions I have done this research is to find out what Indian drugs can be used. In fact, there are so many, and that may be because I have come from a Vaidya stock. My whole family, as I trace it, from 1290, we were brought to this place by the ruling king, Bhimdev Rana, as a physician to the court, and that's why my name is Purandare. I was not originally Purandare. I was Puntambekar. Purandare is a physician to the court, it's called Purandare. And ever since that, it's continued down as a Purandare, Puntambekar, Vaidya. So that old Vedic training, you see, I think must have been in my
interest in Ayurveda was
yes, because, and actually I know that some of the drugs that were used in those days, you see, by my grandfather and great-grandfather, they were very successfully used. See, now, for instance, there is one thing that I frequently use in a case of a tubercle. See, instead of using all these modern costly drugs, you see, Amarkanda, Davanita Kanda is found only in the Palghar area hill, and you can use it. It works very well as a anti-tubercular method. You see, and that's the reason why, you see, you find that these drugs could be used, you see.
You have done lot of work in the obstetric side also, the gynecological side. The anterior shoulder work is main important
one that I have
And you have read number of papers and publications are there also to your credit. Would you tell about those?
You see, these papers have been by hundreds. So different aspects and different things.
The books you had published.
Books also, I have published a textbook. Obstetrics in Marathi. And in fact, it got the first prize, international prize, best book, vernacular book, other than English. It was one of the best illustrated and written book. Only last year I got the prize for that, international prize. Like that, I have written so many books.
The first edition is in around 40 years ago?
Yeah, about 40 years ago. It has been going on.
In Marathi it is written.
Yes, now it is the 11th and 12th edition is coming out and all that sort of thing goes on. There are so many other books also. Breast milk, you see, feeding of the breast milk and called the breastfeeding with love. You see, that's how that's the one that has been published also. Then there is a biography, Shalya Kaushalya, that is indicating all the medical aspects of this.
Scalpel skills.
Yeah, scalpel skill, Shalya Kaushalya.
Marathi 2 editions are already.
Yes, Marathi is there and Hindi is there and now English will come out also. And a Gujarati also is coming out.
Nana Sahib, you had trained number of students and there are generations of students also. So any special student which you remember of or any special patients you had treated which you remember?
There are so many, because I never forget my patient, that's one thing.
All the patients you remember?
I remember my patient, and not only that, but the patient's disease. Once
Is it a doctor-patient relationship which is
developed? I
developed?
don't know, but this is a correlation between the two. One patient I saw in 1939 September. At the patient's place, she was running temperature. She was pregnant 5 months and the temperature was not coming, and I went and saw her. See, and then after 28 years, I saw the patient again. She brought her daughter. And then I said, I see you after many years. She said, no, I never saw you. See? Patient has forgotten. She said, I never saw you. I said, what are you telling? You were at such and such a place in such and such a small bungalow. That time the bungalows were small, you see, small houses. And you are suffering like this and all that. And then your family physician was so and so. When I said family physician, oh yes, you were the ones who had come and treated me and the temperature came down. That's what it is. You see, there is a phrase in Gujarati, they say, see, Kam Saro and Vaid Maro. You see, that is the type of a thing, you see, in Gujarati. So, as soon as the work is over, patient forgets.
But the obstetrician, the lady doesn't forget, I suppose.
No, the doctor never forgets.
And the doctors also don't forget them.
See, yeah.